So as I said, last time we discussed modesty, we were speaking about some of the spirit behind modesty and trying to maybe change some people's perspective on modesty. And we really shared how that when God created woman, he said to her, be modest, be modest, be modest with every limb of the first woman, the prototype of all of us, Chava, Eve, every limb as he created her, he said, be modest, be a modest woman, be a modest woman. God is saying this is our fiber. This is our being. This is who we are. This is who he wants us to be. And perhaps we said that's why it's so challenging. The more important something is, the more challenging it is. And if God is literally with each limb pleading with us, be a modest woman, that means this is ultimately important. So it makes sense. It's, for many of us, very, very difficult, very challenging. And that's the general principle. The more important, the more challenging, and the more blessings. I remember Menucha was sharing. Some people, when we discuss this, like Rachel, for example, was sharing the spiritual feelings, the benefits, the change in self through modesty. Chava also shared along those lines, a change in self. I remember Menucha said, she changed, but she saw a lot of brachas. She saw a lot of blessings opening up. And the more she worked on her modesty, she saw more and more blessings opening up for her and for her family, which of course, the more important, the more challenging, and the more blessings. So where is this coming from? Well, modesty has two broad sources for laws, very unusual. The only commandment that has two sources. One is called Da'as or Da'at Moshe, the knowledge, the wisdom of Moses. And one is called Da'as Yehudis, Da'at Yehudit, which means the wisdom, the knowledge of Yehudis, the Jewish woman. Which do we have to follow? We have to follow both. Both are absolutely binding on us. But what's the difference? Well, Das Moshe, the wisdom of Moses, those are the guidelines from Torah. For example, that a married woman has to cover her hair. Married women cover their hair. That's derived from Numbers, chapter 5, verse 18, where a woman who is perhaps suspected of inappropriate relationships, as she is undergoing a whole ceremony in the temple to bring her to confess, one of the things done to her is her hair is uncovered. And we're told, why did they uncover her hair? Because that's a disgrace. For a married woman to be with uncovered hair is embarrassing. So this is Torah. This is permanently institutionalized. This is unchanging. Those are the laws as we know them. But there's another set of laws that very unusually, very uniquely, we get from Da'as Yehudis. Da'as Yehudis means the accepted standard of modest dress in Jewish communities. Meaning, these are standards adopted by observant Jewish women. And these standards assumed the status of law. This is unique for modesty. No other commandment so much depends on human decisions. It's very unusual. God doesn't say, I'm going to rely on your innate sense of kosher. No, he gave us the laws of kosher. God's not relying on our innate sense of what is Sabbath. He gave us the laws for Sabbath. But for modesty, God is saying, I created women with an innate sense of modesty. I can rely on you to express that in your dress and demeanor. And some aspects were never spelled out in any of the early sources because things didn't need to be said. They were understood. For most of history, it was enough to tell women, dress and act appropriately, and they got it. We already need to know what are the rules. But a lot of the rules come from Da'as Yehudis, from the women understanding intuitively, this is what it means to dress modestly, dressing like that. This is what it means to behave modestly, behaving like that. And those dresses and behaviors became the law. There's a third aspect. So we have the Torah of Moses, Das Moshe, where we could go back biblically. We have Das Yehudis, what the women adapted over the centuries. And the third aspect is the customs of the local place, meaning if where you live, all observant women adhere to a certain standard, you need to follow it. It's considered disrespectful to the community. It's considered immodest to conspicuously depart from the norm. Now, obviously, this is only for raising the standard, not lowering it. Meaning, if all the women are lax in a certain way, don't say, well, I got to follow the customs. I don't want to stick out and like be ultra religious here. No, then follow God's laws. But when the custom is higher, stricter, more demanding than God's laws, but this is the custom that all the women in this area follow, then when you're there, you have to follow it. For example, in some communities, women don't drive. It's considered immodest. Now, in the broad general world of religious Jewry, women drive. But in some communities, women still don't drive. So if you lived in such a community, driving actually would be wrong, even though in the broader world it's fine. But if everyone here doesn't drive, then I can't do what everyone else is not doing. It makes me immodest, right? I'm noticed in an immodest way. Now, obviously, within modesty, there's lots of nuances and sensitivities. Like for, in other words, certain things are very black and white. There's the laws: cover your collarbone, cover your arms through your elbows, wear a skirt, cover your knees in any position, sitting, standing, walking, running, jumping, nothing too loud or flashy or tight-fitting. Those are, pretty cut out clear. But then there's things that are more subtle, and you really have to pull on our innate sense of modesty that hopefully is there under all the ways Western society in the 21st century has tried to crush it, to guide you through the nuances. For example, if you have male guests, are you supposed to be warm and friendly to them or not? Very specifically, do you use a man's first name? Should men use your first name? How do you introduce yourself to men? Any thoughts on these ideas that are probably very practical for all of us? Any thoughts on any of these ideas? How do you feel if you are having a dinner party or people are over at your Sabbath table or you're out with groups, couples? Do you have any sense that there's a difference in how you're supposed to act with the men to act with the women, or not really? You're all friends and it's all fine and your husband's right there. Or you're with a group of friends, men and women, very public. Any thoughts on this?
I can just say what I see, what is done. Usually we communicate with men differently. Like we would chat with women if a group of friends got together, and very little with the other men.
And you're saying you think that just because you have more in common with the women, so you're going to talk to them about things the men will be bored?
We sit like women on one side and men at the other side of the table. So naturally you communicate more with women.
Any other thoughts on that? So it's interesting because, again, you could say, what? There's laws about that? Like, what in the world can anyone be doing wrong? It's not a question of laws. It's a question of sensitivities. I went to the idea of using a man's name, a first name of a man, and just talking to him. I mean, he's, you're all sitting at the same table. You're all going out together. You all know each other's names. But like, a name's an intimate thing. A name expresses essence. As we know, as we've learned, we don't say the names of our parents or our step-parents or in-laws. It's considered disrespectful because it's too familiar. So when a man is calling you by your name, have you ever felt that? Like, why is he calling me by my name? Like, I don't even know you. I don't want to know you. Like, we're not close. Don't pretend we're close. It doesn't feel comfortable. Or no, not at all. Never crossed your radar.
At work, everybody refers to each other by first name.
And does it feel comfortable because it's work, so it's appropriate?
It's familiar. I never thought of that because nobody's formal at work. Co-workers.
So it feels fine. You all know each other. This is the standing you all have, and it feels totally appropriate.
And we are so used to it.
And you're so used to it, so if there would be an issue, it would have happened years ago and you'd have gotten past it.
Cyril, I a little bit don't understand. What do you expect us to feel? Because I am along with these ladies. Like if I go to shul, every Shabbos we have a dinner, lunch, Kiddush, and we all sit couples, most of us couples, there are some people singles, usually we sit like, let's say I am a couple and there is another couple, woman to woman, and then men will be outside of us. So we're trying to be like women next to each other, and then men's still next to me, my husband still man, husband to my friend next to her, and then other couple will be this way also, like man to man, woman to woman. So, but we still sit at the one line. Then table is a big, could be L letter, could be, I don't know, number of tables around. So we all sitting this way, and we know each other. Everyone is talking by name. We use Hebrew names. Rabbi will talk. If we talk to Rabbi, we'll say Rabbi, or to Robertson, we call by name. Her name is Sarah, so we call her Sarah. And maybe men will, they notice that men will be calling her Robertson. But usually between us women, we call her Sarah. And the same way she talks to us and she calls our husbands by their names. So I don't see what I should feel differently than normal, unless you're going to introduce something that we are missing.
Good point, Miriam. I think what Rivka said is very true. What you get used to, what you're exposed to as the norm, even if at one point it didn't feel normal, like you squash that because this is the norm. This is life. This is the world. Don't be weird. But really, inside, every woman has a real sense of modesty. That is how God created us. Like literally, as we said, when he created the first woman, who's a prototype of all of us, he literally with each limb said, be a modest woman, be a modest woman, be a modest woman. So inside of us, there is a sensitivity to modesty. But I totally agree with what Rivka said and what Rachel said and what you are saying. The world covers over it, or if we had like a little uncomfort, it would just be like, okay, that's weird. Like, move on. Obviously, there's no problem. But really, honestly, if we were in our native state, if we really were just in touch with ourselves, I do believe every one of us would feel different in talking to a woman than in talking to a man. There is a different dynamics going on. There is. Our world is pretending that there's nothing different. A woman could be friends with a man. A woman could be friends with a woman. Like, it's all the same. Man could be friends with a woman. We could all be friends. Not really. Not really how God made us. Honestly, no. And honestly, if you're sensitive to it, and sensitivity comes a lot with protecting yourself, creating barriers, if they're not real artificial ones, that protect your inner sense of modesty and don't let it get dulled. And when those barriers are in place, which either you're just somehow blessed and you have this throughout your whole life, or as an adult, you're making choices to create barriers that you don't have, but when you create the barriers, it allows that sensitivity to come out. Let me give you an example of what I mean. I'll tell you a personal, I don't know if I call it an embarrassing story about myself, but I'll say a personal story. Many years ago, this is, I don't even remember how long ago, it was like some 25 years ago, I'm sure. I heard that some rabbis forbid, say it is wrong, for a woman to wear a slit in her dress or skirt, even if the slit is only below the knee, meaning many skirts have slits in them. So if you're wearing a skirt and it's covering your knees, but there's a slit over your knee, well, obviously then it's not according to Jewish law, because every time you walk or sit, that part of the knee or leg will be exposed, obviously. But I heard, could you imagine? Some rabbis say that even if the slit is below the knee, which means the leg that is being shown is allowed to be shown, wrong. Now I heard this and I was like, oh my gosh, like that didn't make any sense in my brain. What's the problem? I don't need a skirt there. It's way past my knee. Why in the world do I need to cover an area that I don't need to cover? But I looked into it because I wanted to be, sincere with God and do the right thing. And I found out that actually this is true. And actually, yes, rabbis wrote these letters, very clearly ruled that you can't do it. So I was like, okay, And I was like, I don't understand the problem. I was trying to understand the problem because obviously it's easier to do something if you understand the problem. But I was like, I could not wrap my brain around it. And I was trying. It still made no sense to me. But I was like, okay, this is what the rabbi say. So I don't know if I gave away my skirts or I closed them all or I sewed in a kick pleat, whatever. Somehow I stopped doing it. I accepted the ruling of the rabbis. And every one of my skirts, one way or another, I did something to them. So I no longer had any slits below my knee. I think it took me like a week and a half to understand what the problem was with that. It was that fast and obvious. And here I was sincere. I wasn't like, oh, that's so stupid. No, I really wanted to understand the problem. And I couldn't get it. My brain didn't get it. I couldn't compute the problem. I didn't understand. Maybe if I consulted with some people that could say things clearly, they would have told me in a second, but like I didn't. And in my own mind, I could not understand the problem. But once I was within that boundary, that artificially created, meaning I am following what the rabbis say without understanding at all. So I'm imposing upon myself a boundary that makes no sense to my brain, but I'm doing it. I very quickly got it. It allowed my natural sensitivity to come out and see it without any of the blinders of our own self-love, self-bribery, whatever it is that color our vision. It was very obvious to me, the problem. So of course, it's totally makes perfect sense that everyone here, perhaps their whole life, has grown up in a society that say men and women are the same. And you could all hang out together, you could all be friends together, and there's no problem and there's no issue. And even in Jewish law, in a sense, you could say, well, we're not doing anything forbidden. So like, what's the problem? It's a nuance. It's a sensitivity. Could you regain it? Only by establishing an artificial barrier around yourself, like, at least personally, refraining from calling a man by his first name. If you did that, and it might feel like strange and you have to figure out ways to do it so nobody realizes what you're doing, you look really weird. But I think it wouldn't take long for you to start feeling what I'm saying, that there's a difference. And that our innate sense of modesty is very healthy and real. And when we are in those situations, we feel it. We feel like, wait, this doesn't seem right. I know it's supposed to be right. I don't know why it's wrong, but it doesn't seem right. It seems like I shouldn't be so comfortable and familiar. And if I am comfortable and familiar, like, it doesn't seem like it's supposed to be. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. Anyone else? Any other thoughts on this?
So how are we supposed to say Mr. such and such?
Well, you could be like we were discussing when you talk to your mother-in-law and you're not sure what to call her. Just avoid it. Figure out a way to avoid it, Make a joke about it. Oh, the husband of my good friend there. Can you pass me that? I'm not saying you have to. I'm not saying there's any prohibition in doing it. I'm talking about regaining a sensitivity that all of us innately have. But we live in a world that tries to crush that sensitivity.
Can I ask a question, sort of?
Sure.
You said that the leg below the knee can be uncovered. Can be completely uncovered, or we have to wear tights or something?
No, we have to wear, I'm sorry, thank you for catching me on that. We have to wear some type of stocking or tights or leggings or socks or something. What I meant was there's no obligation to cover that area with a skirt. So your skirt, as long as your knee is completely covered in any position, getting in and out of a car and such things, you're fine. You don't need to wear a skirt to your ankles or to your toes. There's no problem in those legs being exposed, meaning within tights or stockings, but exposed. But if the skirt is longer, then don't expose that leg. It's like
Why tights? Why not without?
Why? Well, actually, that is a point that some people, it's not as clear, meaning what our sages say in the Talmud is shoik be'isha erva. The shok is literally the thigh of a woman must be covered. So the question is, well, what about how far does that shok go? Is that the whole leg or is it just the thigh? And yes, I think there are some rabbis that will say that as long as you're covered through your knees and your foot, but the area between the ankle and the knee can be uncovered completely. And some rabbis would say, no, that has to be covered with any type of stocking, as long as it's clear it's stockings, meaning if it's so transparent that nobody knows you're wearing stockings, it doesn't count. But as long as there's some obvious stocking there, it's fine. Other communities are more strict than that. And there's some communities that say no, the stockings have to be a certain thickness, that it's really obvious it's stockings. And some say, no, that's not good enough. The stockings have to have a seam down the back, so it's obvious it's stockings. So as long as you are following a rabbi that you follow, you're fine. You can follow any of those opinions. Again, within religious orthodoxy, no one's going to say your knee could be uncovered. But in terms of the calf, yes, there are all four of those opinions I gave you. Somebody holds. The question is, do you hold by the rabbis that hold by those opinions?
If the skirt is all the way to the ankle, then stocking is not necessary?
If the skirt would not rise up in any way that anyone could see that your leg was bare, then it's fine. It's really a question, technical, practical question.
Why?
It's not a mystical concept, stockings. It means that there's a covering on the leg. So if the leg is so covered that no one's going to see, then it's fine.
We don't cover the same way the arms.
Correct. Where the arms do not have the same law. It is actually interesting because in the early sages, they do debate this as well. That it says clearly, again, the arm of the woman, but what means the arm? What do they mean? And this is debated. And there were some sages that felt that, it's all the way to the wrist. But that never became the accepted position in the Jewish people. So the accepted position by all is that as long as through the elbow it's covered, the forearm can be exposed, no problem. So we don't have anyone today that follows that dissenting voice that's saying, no, an arm means till the wrist. You're absolutely right. And that's why we really have to know what the laws are and say, again, so would there be a merit in saying, well, I want to be ultra close to God. So I want to cover my forearms also because I want to be even closer to God. No, don't try to be more religious than God's asking you, because adding is in a sense taking away, meaning if God says this can be exposed, then that means it's fine. And therefore there's no issue in saying, no, but I want to cover it, because no, it's fine. Let it be exposed and don't feel at all it's a problem. Of course, if you personally, with your personal sensitivity, feel uncomfortable, well, that could be your personal modesty, and then cover it. But in terms of just saying, it doesn't bother me personally, but I want to be as close to God as possible, so I want to go beyond the letter of the law, so I'm going to take on myself something no rabbi's asking, probably not so healthy.
Oh, another question. I see that some women, when they are surrounded just by women, like say at the gym, locker room, they don't cover the same way they cover outside. Is it okay?
I don't want to say what someone's doing is not okay. I think there are levels in everything. As we were saying last time we discussed modesty originally starts off in its biblical source as a relationship between you and God. If you remember, we said that it's actually talking about men in war covering their excrement in the camp. That's the original biblical source for modesty. It's not women, and it's not women's clothing, and it's men and their excrement in an army camp. And God was demanding, which was definitely not done by anyone else, no, I'm in your camp, and don't do things that chase me away. Don't be immodest. Your camp is holy because I'm in your camp. We understand that is the core biblical vision of modesty. God's everywhere. When you're with women, when you're in public, when you're in private. And going back to this concept I was saying before in terms of your comfort with men, with first names and such things, the more we let ourselves be comfortable being not modest, the more we're comfortable being not modest. I remember once, this was also years ago, I give it a good 25 years ago. I was teaching in high school a Chumash class. One of my passions is teaching Chumash. I was teaching Rashi. It was a very, very complex Rashi, very complex. It took us, and I kid you not, 3 days to learn one long, complicated Rashi. Now, in the Rashi, there was a word which in English was, I don't know if we remember if we translated it as bosom, as chest, one of these two. It wasn't describing a woman. It was describing, actually, I believe, the mun, food the Jews ate, but it's the fat. Oh, breast. That was the word. The word was breast, because it was different. It was like 3 different explanations, and it was compared to a fat breast. This is an all women's class, obviously only girls and myself. And we spent 3 days on this Rashi. And I noticed, but I didn't say anything. But at the end of the 3rd day, one of the students said this. She said, you know, in the beginning, meaning 3 days ago, when we started discussing this Rashi, everyone felt very not comfortable just saying that word. I mean, obviously to a group of women, it's Rashi, it's Torah. There's nothing wrong here, but people didn't feel comfortable. They felt like awkward. But now, 3 days later, we spent 3 days analyzing this Rashi. We've been 3 days talking about this. Everyone's saying it, so it's tripping off everyone's tongue. And I had noticed the exact same thing. It was to me a very clear phenomena. It was so obvious. It took 3 days, a day meaning a 45-minute session of learning, right? It took 2 hours and 15 minutes for us all to become desensitized. So going back to your question, when a woman allows herself to be not modest and starts feeling very comfortable not being modest, even in the company of other people who happen to be women, it's affecting the whole sensitization, that whole sense of this is supposed to be covered. This is supposed to be private. So those would be in my head the 2 issues. In terms of technically it's allowed, it would depend on technically what that area is considered. Meaning, if that area is considered like a regular public area, it just happens to be only women there, then no, it's forbidden. If that area is considered part of a bathhouse area, then technically it's permitted. The only place where you're with other people that you're allowed to expose yourself is if you're in what our sages would call a bathhouse. So is a locker room a bathhouse? I don't know. So that's my technical answer to you. And my first 2 points were, as I would view it, more the spirit of what's going on. Anyone else? Any other thoughts? Any other questions?
Cyril, I remember you were telling us when we're changing, if when we're alone at home, we should change in bath house. Where
Yes,
I remember
that is the law. Yes, that is actually the law.
What about if I am home and uncover my hair and only my husband is present, or either I'm alone or only my husband is present at home?
It's the same idea. It's only supposed to be uncovered in a bathhouse.
Oh, okay.
So what Rivka is referring to, and this is in a sensitive emotional nuance, like we were discussing before, this is actually the law, that the only place you're supposed to change your clothing, which means get undressed, is either under your covers, which I highly do not recommend, and I do not do it because I think it's too impossible to do it properly, or will be a bathhouse, which basically means a washroom, a bathroom that has a bath or a shower in it. That is really what the sages are saying is the only place you should expose yourself. Obviously, no one else is around. Who are you exposing yourself to? Well, that's the point I was making before with Rachel. You're exposing yourself to God. So this is according to the laws. You're home, the doors are locked, no one's in. Can't you walk around in whatever you want? God says, no, I'm there. I'm there. Respect me, respect my presence. I want you to be covered. I want you to have this sense of my presence in your life in a very, very real way. Why do we bother? Oh my gosh. Well, specifically, Rivka spoke about the hair covering. So I'm going to share, this is a very famous vignette in the Talmud. It discusses a certain technical situation where one woman merited that, I don't remember, 7 or 8 of her children all at one point served as high priest. It doesn't mean that they all died one after another. There was nothing negative going on, whatever. I'm not going to go into the technicalities of the situation, why that happened. But it was considered tremendous merit. Oh my gosh. Again, I don't remember if it was 6, 7, 8. A lot of her sons all served as high priest. So the sages asked her, lady, what is your special merit that you merited that 6, 7, 8, fill in the blank of your sons were high priests, like the holiest Jews, 6 or 7 or 8 of them? What did you do? Now you think she said, I got no clue. She said she knew exactly what it was. She said, the walls of my house have never seen my hair. I have never exposed my hair, ever. Obviously meaning since she got married. She said, that's my merit. It's a very, very powerful point. Very, very, very powerful, of like the power of that. I'll share an updated story. This wasn't what we're supposed to be talking about, but that's okay. We're going the direction people are asking, and I'm sure someone here needs to hear this. In Russia, there was a horrific decree that maybe you know from your own history, at one point called the Kantonistim. Anyone here heard of the Kantonistim? Yeah, I got one nod. Nobody else ever heard of the Kantonistim? This is your ancestors. This decree was, yes, and Miriam also heard of this. I got two people that have heard of this. Kantonistim, this took place in the time of the third Lubavitcher Rebbe, which means it was probably, I'd say about like, I'm guessing about the 1840s. That's a guess, but I'm assuming around then. And this was a horrific decree designed to physically and spiritually decimate the Jewish people. And basically, there was a ruling in Tsarist Russia that every Jewish community had to turn over a certain number of very young children to the Tsar, to the army. Well, what do you need a 6-year-old kid for the army? We don't, but we're taking them at a young age. And they would take these children with the goal of either them dying or them baptizing, them becoming convert to Christianity. And they abused them, they treated them horribly. So many did die. And some, of course, did, do the other choice. And they just used them as like slave labor, because obviously they don't want these kids as soldiers if they're 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 or 10. So they basically were slave laborers to the army or to some anti-Semite Ukrainian peasant until they were about age 18 or 20. And then they were conscripted for like 30 years. And then it was like horrible. And then at that point, maybe they could go back home, but of course they had no clue where home was because they were often taken so young. They had no clue who their family was. They maybe knew their town. They maybe got back home. And many of them they felt so like disconnected, like we don't know these people. They've lived such different lives. We've been living and these were the ones that survived. Obviously, most of them did not survive by deliberate design. There was, of course, tremendous anti-Semitism in the army, and the fellow soldiers, even when you made it to be a soldier from age 20 to 50, I'm being rough, I don't remember the exact age, it was something like that, were very, very abusive to the Jews, and many of them perished deliberately. This was a horrific, horrific decree. And of course, the communities could not come up with a quota of boys they wanted, so you had kidnappers that would do it for hire, and they would literally go around and kidnap boys, young children, even way younger than the army wanted, just to like fill the quota. And they would get money, the kidnappers, from the army. It was a horrible, horrible, terrifying time. 20 years before this, there was another decree in our beloved Mother Russia. This decree was not allowing Jewish women to cover their hair. This was a decree. I don't remember how many years it went on until somehow we managed to get it rescinded. And literally, if any Jewish, maybe they said all women can't and non-Jewish women didn't, or maybe they said Jewish women. They could have said Jewish women. But the bottom line was, if they caught a woman on the streets with her hair covered, they would beat her. They would beat her very violently. And of course, there was plenty of anti-Semites that were very happy to do the job. And it became like a very, very dangerous situation. And many Jewish women who were pious and covered their hair, they stopped covering their hair because they were just terrified of getting beaten cruelly, viciously by any non-Jew that would see them, that would catch them. And of course, some women sacrificed and never went out of the house, or you're allowed to, in your house, they didn't go in, stayed at home or whatever, chanced it, and got caught and got beaten sometimes. The Tzemach Tzedek, who was the third Rebbe of Chabad, and who was the leader of world Jewry, he was the Rebbe during the time of the Kantonistim, which was a horrific, such a painful, and it went on for years, era in the Jewish people. The Tzemach Tzedek said that any woman who passed the test 20 years before, meaning she didn't go outside with her hair uncovered despite the threat to her, despite the personal danger, none of her children were ever taken to be Kantonistim. Kantonistim is the term for these child soldiers. Again, most of them kidnapped, lynched, grabbed. None of her children were ever touched. Any woman that passed that test some 20 years before, none of her children were ever grabbed. They had a protection. And the protection was the mother's unbelievable physical self-sacrifice to keep her hair covered. So it's, these things, as I said before, they're very powerful, very significant. They affect us, they affect our children, and we don't have the future sight to understand how. Like, imagine 20 years before, I would imagine any woman in the world, if she was told, if you self-sacrifice and just never leave your house, figure it out, never leave, send a child, send your husband, don't go out or risk it, your child will be saved and will not be kidnapped when they're kidnapping little Jewish children off the streets. You're like, what do you mean kidnapping little Jewish children off the streets? It's going to happen. And your child will be saved. If you self-sacrifice now, well, of course you would do it. Right? Who wouldn't do it? What wouldn't we do for our children? But you're not told that. You're just given a very, very difficult challenge. So it's a very, very powerful, powerful, powerful energy. Why is it so powerful? This is the essence of the woman. This is the essence. And every message in the world that tries to desensitize us, tries to objectify us, every message is deliberately targeting this most critical, sensitive space of godliness that we have inside of ourselves.